Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Women in Engineering Chapter's webinar tonight. We'll be celebrating Engineering Heroes. Before we start, a few webinar considerations. Attendees are reminded to ensure the volume is turned up on their device. Ensure you have a stable internet connection. This will ensure the streaming and audio will run smoothly. Attendees can ask questions via the questions panel located within the GoToWebinar control panel. By default, the control panel is located on the right-hand side of your screen. The chat function is reserved for webinar organizers and panelists to communicate with attendees. Attendees will not be able to chat with each other, however, are encouraged to ask questions. A recording of this webinar will be made available on the SAIEE YouTube channel, SAIEE TV, under the name of the Women in Engineering chapter. This channel is updated regularly, so ensure you check back as often as possible for new uploads. Please click on the link that will appear in the chat box shortly to subscribe to our SAIEE TV channel. It's free. A certificate of attendance will be issued a few days after this webinar. I'd like to introduce you now to our host for tonight, Ms. Fatima Baloy. She's a network planning engineer for Eskom. Fatima started her career as an engineer in training at Eskom Distribution in 2012. She is currently appointed as a network development planner responsible for ensuring that the expansion of the power system is optimally planned to sustain the demand placed on the power system. She is actively involved in power system studies with a particular interest in renewable power plant grid integration feasibility studies. She holds a BEng electronic engineering degree and registered with EXA as a professional engineer. She's a member of the Renewable Generation Grid Integration Work Group in Eskom. She's also a member of the Technical Evaluation Forum and a Secretariat for Self-Built in Mpumalanga Operating Unit. I hand you over now to Fatima. Sorry, Fatima, please unmute yourself. Sorry, Fatima, you still muted?
Okay, I've unmuted now. Thanks, Nix, for a lovely introduction. I cannot believe all these things that you read about me, but fortunately, they're all true. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much that you are here. I would just like to take this opportunity to welcome you to the webinar that we're having today. And as on behalf of the SAIEE Women in Engineering chapter, I just want to say, you know what, thank you for taking the time out to be here with us. And this evening, as you know, we are celebrating the International Women in Engineering Day, which took place on the 23rd of June. The theme for this evening basically is it's engineering heroes. So we have decided to, as a chapter, to profile 3 female engineers with a diverse background, just to share with us some of the projects that they have done, which they believe that have been life-changing for their careers. So I will just now introduce you to some of our panelists. We have 3 of them. The first panelist for this evening, we have Prudence Madiba, who is a senior manager at Eskom. Prudence Madiba is a senior manager in control and instrumentation, which is CNI, engineering department at Eskom. Prudence holds a BSc in electronic engineering from UKZN, a PhD business management also from UKZN, and a GDE industrial engineering from Wits, and a master's in engineering management from the University of Pretoria. She's one of the founders of the Pufani STEM Foundation. This is a non-profit organization which focuses on improving teaching and learning in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics subjects in township schools in Gauteng. Their objective is to increase township learners who enroll for STEM courses at higher education institutions over the next 5 years. Our second speaker for this evening is Petunia Siele, who is a managing director at Standalone. Petunia completed her BSc in electrical engineering from the University of Cape Town in 2007. She then went on to work at Eskom for several years. She has also held various positions in the private sector, such as project manager also a senior manager in an infrastructure asset management firm. Most recently, Ms. Yena was a utility segment leader at Schneider Electric. She is currently the managing director of Standalone Pty Ltd and an independent consultant for consulting for the World Bank Group on the sub-national business program for South Africa. Petunia is a professional engineer registered with the Engineering Council of South Africa, and she's also a member of the SAIEE. Wow, Petunia, these ladies that I'm reading through here, they are so well accomplished. Our third speaker for this evening is Mpho Mahlamvu. She's an infrastructure asset management executive. Mpho Mahlamvu has a deep understanding of the maintenance of public infrastructure in South Africa, as well as the associated nonsense and its impact on social justice. Her specific interests are understanding the value chain drivers required for successful infrastructure implementation within the region, as well as the role women play in this field. She is an award-winning technology innovator. She was awarded the first prize in the GAP Green Innovation Competition run by the Innovation Hub in 2014. She has also successfully pioneered the first implementation of real-time remote monitoring of critical equipment, such as boiler tanks, for improved maintenance planning through utilizing the Internet of Things, which in short is IoT, within the public infrastructure space in 2018. She is an advocate of women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and is a registered project management professional since 2013 and a member of the Institute of Directors. This is 2021. So ladies and gentlemen, you have now met our three panelists, and I think from the accolades that I've read about them, we can all agree that we are in the midst of greatness. So I hope that you have sat down and you have buckled up, because you know what, I think we're just about to learn some exciting things from these ladies. So I have already introduced to you to our speakers. So let me perhaps give Prudence, as you know that today they'll be sharing with us projects which they believe that have been, have put them on the map. So projects that they believe that have been life-changing for their careers. Without these projects, they do not believe that they would be where they are today. So let me hand over to you, Prudence. If you can just, share with us that project which you believe, has been life-changing for your career. Thank you. Over to you, Prudence.
Thank you, Fatima. Good evening, my fellow ladies. Good evening, fellow engineers. It's my pleasure to be part of the panelists with this wonderful woman. And I'm sure we'll learn a lot from all of the panelists today. And I'm looking for further engagement for all of the participants. It's a bit of a difficult one to answer which project really I think has put me into the map. I've been fortunate to work for, let me say, only one organization. But this organization, because of its size, I've worked for Eskom now for 19 years. But because of the size that Eskom is, it hasn't felt like I've worked only for one main employer, because I've moved through the various divisions of Eskom and worked at different levels. But and I've been involved through a number of midlife refurbishment projects and also new build projects. So if you talk about projects that I would say this has been the biggest, I think, for me, not only from a financial point of view, because we're talking multi-billion project here, I'll talk about the new build refurbishment of the Medupi project. My role in that was not from a design point of view, but I was a senior manager at that point, leading a team of about 200 engineers that were focused on the design of the Medupi new project, the Medupi, the Kusile, and the Ingula new build project. Hence, I'm talking multi-billion projects. Why I choose the Medupi one, the CNI at Medupi construction thereof. I was also responsible for the electrical systems as well. But why this one particularly is because of the impact that it had. One, from a business point of view, it was about the image of Eskom in terms of us not meeting the timelines and the project being delivered on time and the load shedding issues in the country. So the project itself has implication in terms of the image of the organization, the financial impact from an economic point of view in terms of the number of contractors that are involved in this, the number of OEMs that are involved in this, the number of employees, the financial impact on the of the societies that are impacted by the work that we do around the Lephalale area, and also the developmental opportunities that the project itself had given, both internally and also externally, in terms of the number of people that we managed to train with this project as well, as part of one of the initiatives that we're doing. So the project had major implication on us as Eskom, but also on me as an individual, having to pull this through. And when I joined the team, we were at a major part of the CNI development and Medupi, where we had to make a biggest decision from the CNI to change the OEM of the control system at the later part of the project, given strict time to be able to change the OEM at that time, deliver a new system and make sure that it's integrated into the whole project, and still within time, fast-track time, and prove that we have made a good technical decision that benefited the organization and also improved the system, which we are still looking after at the moment to improve all the defects on that plant. So it was one of those that had, I think, from a career point of view, played a major role in influencing not only me, but having a major influence around the development of a control system as a whole in the country, and it being one of the biggest power station in the African continent. I think that added much value indeed. So if I had to choose a project, that will be one. But also on a second phase now, talking about my involvement on the Pufani STEM organization, our role in that is to try and increase the input of not only women, girls, but also boys into the science streams, hoping that will turn them into engineers as we role model ourselves as electrical engineers and positioning ourselves for those high school learners to model around what they see in us, what they see us putting back into the community. So that is another project that might not be a multi-billion project, but it has huge implication on the country in terms of us trying to increase the feed into the engineering studies. I think I'll end there, Fatima. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've underlined a few things from what you've said, and I can just say, you know, one of the things that is coming out from what everything that you just shared now is you having been responsible for over 200 engineers. You know, that speaks volumes to the kind of leadership that you have, and also the fact that, you know, we're looking at a project like Medupi and Kusile. We know that those projects are, everybody in the country has been like gazing at those projects, and to be responsible for projects which are over over billions of rands, and for us to find ourselves in your presence, you know, we can only learn so much. And one of the things that I highlighted from everything that you shared also is your passion to wanting to give back to the profession. So thank you so much there for sharing that with us. And obviously, no, I'm not the only one, even from the audience. I'm sure there's a lot of questions that they would like to ask, or they would like to engage with you so they can learn more from you. But for now, I will move over to Patience, Petunia rather, sorry. Petunia, if you could just join us, feedback on the platform, if you can just activate your video so that you can also take us through to that project which you believe that has been life-changing to your career. Over to you.
Thank you, Fatima. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
For me, you know, I just want to add on what Prudence said earlier. It's not always about the monetary value of a project. You know, I've done many projects in the past where you know, the monetary figure was just so high, but there wasn't really a lot of impact on a social level. So for me, one project comes to mind that we have recently completed. It's a project that we have done in rural Northwest. It's a water sector project. So the project involves boreholes in the area that had been vandalized. So there's equipment that's been stolen, such as transformers and cables and motors and so forth. So what we have done is we have replaced the equipment, but having done that, we are also looking at ways to make sure that the theft problem does not persist. For me, this project is life-changing because if you think about it, if there's no water in an area and people have to walk for long distances to go and get water, it's mostly women and girls that are actually impacted because they are the ones that end up having to walk long distances to make sure that they go and get water for the family, to take care of the family, you know. So it's, you know, to have done a project like that, to get to see that point where the water is actually coming out and people are celebrating because it's just so, it makes such a big difference in their lives. You know, it's very heartwarming because it's a, you know, it shows that there's impact in the work that we are doing. You know, sometimes we tend to take it lightly because we tend to think about the money mostly more than the social impact. So yes, that's what we've done. And another closely related project is one that we have completed in Mpumalanga. It's also a water sector project where we have installed a telemetry system. So what happened is previously so this project is in a water treatment plant. So what was happening is the operators would have to physically get in the car, drive to a certain reservoir or to the dam to go and check the levels of the dam to see if is it full, is it almost full, is there a problem, you know, should we switch it off, on, you know. So what we have done is we have installed a telemetry system. So what they're able to do now with that is they are able to just see on a screen what the water level is, if there's any alarms that have come through, you know, and so they can, in that way, they can use their time to do other things instead of be driving around just to go and check the water level. So yeah, for me, those are the projects that I think, you know, they have changed my life in big ways. They seem like small project, but they've actually changed my life in big ways because you can see the impact that it's making on people's lives.
Thank you, Petunia, for sharing that. And you know, so often people may think when you study engineering, you don't get to touch lives, but in both the projects that you have done, you know, there's an element there where the social impact is so great. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for sharing that with us, and just to also prove again that in our profession, you know, you don't have to be a doctor to feel that, you know, you are helping people. That we are helping people on a daily basis, and it's just that because you don't have that interaction with people, you may forget that. So these are very interesting projects that you shared, especially when you talk about the second project where you can, the operators can now remotely monitor the alarms from where they're at. And so that also maximizes their work outputs. So thank you so much for that. And
Yeah.
Mpho, Mahlamvu, if I can just move over to you now, if you can also just, you know, share with us that project, just like the two speakers before you, the projects that you feel like, you know what, this one really have been life-changing for my career. Over to you, Mpho.
Thanks very much. I hear a variety of speakers are dominantly ex-ESCOM, and I have roots in ESCOM. I worked there very little. I was an engineer in training, but suffice to say that ESCOM is a very mature engineering organization, and as such, in the CNI and SCADA systems are quite well developed. But you'll be surprised, I think, to know that the rest of public infrastructure doesn't or hasn't followed that kind of process in terms of understanding and controlling instrumentation across the field. So hence, in 2018, I was involved in the Public Infrastructure Office Accommodation IoT implementation, which not only included putting sensors across different, say 300 big facilities, but it also involved what you call ERP or enterprise resource planning integration. So integrating the tools via the cloud into a system, and also obviously creating dashboarding and that sort of visuals. But also what we did was started to push into a call center. I mean, if you imagine the public sector infrastructure I'm talking about is upwards of 100,000 facilities, which push individually into the call centers through human interface. So now with this IoT, I would say almost telemetry solution, we're able to allow the equipment to call the call center and to be able to train. I think the real impact there was to be able to train the call center operators to be able to absorb information from different sources, for them, of course, to be able to see in real time. But the real value of such a project, of course, is it allowed us at the central point of facilities management to be able to start predictive maintenance sort of strategies, to start implementing predictive maintenance strategies. And it also allowed us to be able to allocate resources accordingly. I think it's also important to note the gap left by the COVID-19 impact in terms of availability of people at a certain place at a certain time. So this, obviously, these kind of tools also assist in that you don't have to have all your resources at a certain time. I mean, in a constrained environment, issues around vehicle availability, petrol, start impacting maintenance, how can I say, uptime of assets. So I thought that was very useful. And I think lastly, it was the work that was done to, how can I say, to put working with different OEMs as well, to be able to put the predictive maintenance, how can I say, software as part of the ERP. So not only do people are able to do, how can I say, reactive maintenance, but not the plant maintenance, sort of the predictive maintenance activities were enabled through our project. I thought that was a very instrumental project, and I still dabble in that space a little bit. But I think on the other hand, it's important to note in terms of sort of advocacy, I'm involved in Women in STEM talks, which are YouTube-based talks where I profile different ladies from different walks of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. And in these talks, really, it is to be able to allow, even in this environment of COVID, for people to see role models or people they can role model themselves around, who have charted their careers in very different fields. I think one of the major highlights there, I have had the privilege of interviewing quite senior executives who have established themselves in this infrastructure space, which is, of course, the ecosystem under which we are all are. So I'd say those are the projects I'd like to mention that I think have had an impact in terms of my career.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know, I'm just glad that you did touch on the issue of COVID-19, and just during this time that we're all going through. So it's very refreshing that you would touch on something like that. And when we do have the roundtable discussion, it's one of the topics that I would like us to actually just go deeper just a little bit, if time allows us, just to see the impact that has had on our profession, as we've seen that it has had the impact on other professions. But ladies, thank you so much for sharing all your projects. I know there's a lot of projects that obviously you'd have wanted to share, but the ones that you have chosen for us this evening, we really appreciate. If I can just ask that all the speakers, if you can have all your cameras on now, so that the audience can all see you. And Minx, if it is possible on your side, there's a request from one of the attendees, well, from the floor, to have the ladies' profiles on, if it is possible to have the profiles on, but they requested that while the ladies were speaking. But if it is at all possible, even now, maybe when the speaker is answering one of the questions, it would be beneficial. Then for the audience, they would just like to get to know their panelists a little bit more. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Ming. So we will now be moving on to the next session of the evening. I think it's one of the exciting ones, and I see that a lot of questions have already started trickling in. So Prudence, Petunia, and Mpho, please get ready. I think I can just start off, you know, just to get other people comfortable as well. Let me start with you, Mpho, since you were the last presenter. I just want to find out from you, is there any woman in the engineering sector who has played a pivotal role to your career growth? And can you just name such a person, and can you just tell us how that happened? Over to you, Mpho.
Thank you very much. The lady I think who is it's currently shaping a lot of my thoughts around the infrastructure space, I'd say, is Mem Montlahla. I'm not sure if you're aware of who she is. She's ex-CEO of AXA. She has, I think, ex-chair of IDC, currently chairing the Royal Bafokeng, a very established lady in the infrastructure space. I think she has opened up a space where she is providing some sense of, I would say, mentorship in how to transition or to position a career post the technical section. I mean, I'm not sure how the others' career have evolved, but where I am now, it's not as highly technical as obviously as I began, and the attributes that you need to have in order to be able to have a sense of presence in the industry. Attributes such as, for example, personal branding, issues around which organizations you affiliate yourself with, how you present yourself, issues around the networks that you belong to, and the kind of access and projects that you are able to do that are more integrative in nature. So where you are doing integrating of multiple disciplines, not just engineering disciplines, where you're managing multiple disciplines in order to achieve a business outcome. I truly look up to her. I think she's done phenomenally well. Yeah, I hope you guys get to see her in the industry. She's a very active lady, and I'm sure you guys see a lot of her.
Thank you so much. And you know, I'm glad you mentioned that she's from EXA, and one of the EXA outcomes is to be able to lead multidisciplinary projects. And I'm glad that you are being advised by somebody like that, and for her also telling you that, you know what, you must also look at projects which do integrate other disciplines, because then you're able to get exposure. Thank you for that. And I will just read something that one of the attendees has written here. They're saying, you guys are doing such phenomenal work, and evidently there is engineering capacity in the country. How can we give a bigger voice to professionals in SA's challenges in a way that builds confidence to rely on? So that is basically, they're saying big ups, and the second part of it is basically a question. I don't know if Petunia, perhaps you would like to take that question on, well, the second part of it, just to say that how can we give a bigger voice to professionals in South Africa's challenges in a way that builds confidence, that they can be able to rely in our profession, so to speak.
Yeah. Thanks, Fatima. I hope I'll be able to answer your question. What I think we need to do as women is to show confidence, to have and to be able to speak with conviction and to believe in what we are doing. You know, if you want to be taken seriously, but you yourself you're not believing in what you're saying, there's no way I'm going to believe you, right? So I think that's the most important thing that we need to do. And I think also when people are looking at you and they can see that that level of confidence and you taking the time to actually develop yourself, you know, to associate with the right people to grow your network, you know, people can, you know, they can actually look up to you and say, well, this woman is already doing it, so surely it's possible, you know. So it means that I'm definitely on the right track.
Thank you for that, Petunia, because you know the issue there that the question was coming from was this whole relying sometimes on government to actually outsource, i.e. the Cuban the Cuban experts, if we can call them that, you know. So yeah, that is where that was coming from. Prudence, if I can just ask you, one of the questions that I have planned for you is to say, is there any woman in the engineering sector, similarly to what I asked them for, who has played a pivotal role to your career growth, and how? You know, remember, we are celebrating engineering heroes here, and we just want to hear their names. We want to know who they are. We want to know that there are women out there who are also, supporting the growth of other women. Over to you, Prudence.
Thank you. May I just, Fatima, before I answer you, I'd like to add more on what Petunia was saying. And let me declare, I know it's not on my profile, that I'm an EXCO member of the SAIEE, so I need to take the opportunity just to add, and I'm also on EXA. I just want to add 2 points to what was the question that was asked before. I think some of the things that we do not do well as women is finding ourselves participating and showcasing ourselves as women in different platforms that are out there so that we can sell ourselves. We've got voluntary associations, which is like the one hosting us now as the SAIEE. There are a number of women that are participating and taking leadership in those kind of organizations. We've got some taking a role in the EXA. Even the refiller that I've just that would wrote today is also a VP at EXA. We've got a number of women in council in there. But the question is, when we are in those organizations, how do we represent ourselves? How do we represent us, and knowing that we are representing other women in those platforms? It's important that we do that, that we showcase ourselves in the small little things that we do out there. The other issue, and that brings myth in terms of women and women being able to stand out in a men's men's world, as they say it. It's how we position ourselves there. We've got technical organization internationally, locally, and nationally that women can participate in. The question is, as women, are we taking up those challenges and participating in those organizations so that we can change a view around how they look upon us as women? So let me go back to the question that you then asked. I've had most of the time, because of the structure of the organization, I've had most of the time men mentoring me, and they've supported me as a growth. But there's one woman that I've seen and influenced me and role model that to what I wanted to aspire to be, and I've looked up to her as a woman in engineering, and seeing a woman in engineering succeeding beyond just the ESCOM environment and outside. And when she went outside ESCOM, she also continued to strive as that. It was the late Sis Dolly Mkhatle. She played a major role in forming what I look up to as women in engineering. But there's a woman that plays a major role in also structuring and supporting what values of women should be. And she's not an engineer. It's our LC Ule, the HR ESCOM HR manager, but she's not an engineer. She's an associate member of the Institute of South African Electrical Engineers, and an HR person being able to participate and take up that role shows how much investment she's making in the engineering fraternity and how much development she has contributed towards the industry from being in the HR. And it's from those kind of women that I draw strength for and challenge myself to do better because of what I see them and them cutting across boundaries that have been set there in this technical world that we are in. Thank you.
Thank you, Prudence. Let me also now go to the attendees. One of the questions that has been asked here. This question is from BTJ Maharaj. He's saying, we still have very few women entering engineering studies at university. How can we address this, as we have career activities and it is still a challenge to attract women into engineering? Yet, if you look at Tunisia, there are more females than males. I'm not sure, it cut out, it didn't finish there. So, but yeah, there are more females than male engineers. I think, yeah, studying engineering rather. Yeah, that's what he wanted to say there. Mpho, you touched on it. I think all of you guys touched on it, but I think, Mpho, you can take this one.
I think it's so important to be deliberate about advocacy in all platforms around STEM and specifically around engineering. I think to assume that the equation will balance itself, it's really a short-sighted view. So what I mean is, that's part of, for example, the reason why I started the profiling to be able to showcase, because now it's even worse. You cannot even reach people physically. I think being deliberate is about taking people, showing them these are the options available to you. This is what a woman engineer looks like. I think also there's this perception that women engineers are quite masculine. There's no sense of femininity. So I think it's just important to be very deliberate about exposing people who have developed, or women such as these kind of platforms, by taking it a notch down and making it accessible over all sorts of internet, to be able to promote such organization. I mean, I know a lot of advocates around STEM who are doing a lot on the social media, which is now, I suppose, the accessible platform. I just think that we need to be more deliberate, and the more time we have this kind of celebrations, the more we create visibility of women in this space. I think the better for everyone. That's my view.
Thank you so much, Umpo. I don't know if perhaps Prudence you would like to add to that, but I think Umpo covered it quite well. I will
Yes.
move over to one of my questions.
I'd like to add on to that one. I think one of the issues that, yes, I think one of the issues that are a constraint or a barrier to the entry into tertiary for a lot of girl children. First, one is around the role modeling, but the second one, which is what our foundation looks into, it's making sure that they can meet the requirements. And if a lot of us, especially from the previously disadvantaged background, if a lot of us coming from those environments can create opportunities to plow back into the society, you'll be killing two birds with one stone. One is already yourself going back into that environment. You are already giving someone a role model that they can identify with, that can show reality of what this thing looks like. Secondly, is you are aware of the challenges. You are better positions to understand what they're going through and how to address those. In a little, I can do maybe 2 schools, someone can do another school, but the little that we all build upon, it creates something. The challenge is now, it's with a lot of, and also around the intake of maths versus maths lead and our ability of our feet into the math streams. It goes deeper when we look into the education system, because when you get to grade 10 and trying, when people have already, the pupils have already chosen their subject, it's actually late, because the foundation of them getting to that core maths is what we have done from the time they are in the pre-grades to grade 10, where they're choosing the subjects. So there's a lot of work that needs to be improved, but I think every one of us participating in a small chunk of doing that can build into a better society. Thank you.
Thank you, Prudence. And I think maybe as to sum up, one of the questions that I have here, just to sum that up, and I think Petunia, I would like you to answer this one for me. So often we hear that women have to work 2 times harder and sometimes even more just to be seen as equals with their male counterparts. How can we change this stereotype in the workplace?
Thanks, Fatima. I think, you know, the way to change this is for us to actually take pride in what we do, and to be very confident about what we are doing. So the minute you start taking pride in your work, even other people will be able to see that, you know, it's not, you know, you're sort of like making it look effortless, if I can put it that way. So I think what we need to do is to not overthink it. I know that most of the time we tend to feel intimidated, you know, especially because we are in a male-dominated area. But I think it's very important to understand that one, preparation is key, right? So if you're in an environment and you have not prepared, you know, or let's say for example, you're going to give a presentation to your boss about a project that's very important, but you are not very well prepared, you are somehow going to feel intimidated, even if that is not the impression that they are trying to project onto you. So I think preparation is key. I think we need to understand that we don't necessarily have to work 10 times harder. Okay, yes, maybe we do, but I think we can get past that. I think we can get past that if we just accept that, well, what they can do, we can also do.
Thank you so much for that response. And I think for many females who have joined here, this question, the reason I asked it, it resonates with many of us, because sometimes you feel like I have to work so hard just so that I can prove that, you know, my team is sitting next to me, you know. But in any case, there's more questions coming through here from the floor. And if I can just ask one of them, it's from Gilebohile Modise. He's saying, hi, Miss Petunia. What role did your profession, the electrical engineering role, play in the project you were part of, since they were mostly about water? So they want to understand the link between your profession and to the actual infrastructure projects that you did with regards to the water treatment plant and the project that you did. Over to you, Petunia.
Okay, that's a very interesting point. I like that question because, you know, when we think of water, we think is probably maybe water engineering, civil engineering, that type of thing. But we tend to forget that to actually make this thing work, you need to power it, right? So we have transformers that are providing power to the system. We have wiring that we have to do to make sure that the communication is accurate. You know, because if you're going to, let's say for instance, if you're going to monitor the levels of the water, you need some kind of sensor, and you need communication between what's happening at the reservoir and what's happening at the water treatment plant. And all that communication is actually electrical engineering. It's not something that is in another field. It's straight onto us. So so for me, my background has actually helped me to understand that there's more to electrical engineering, because, you know, sometimes we tend to think, oh, you know, I have to go and install a transformer or provide energy or whatever, but it actually goes down to that level. It does go down to that level of doing something that might seem as simple as just providing water to a community.
Thank you. I hope Bukelebohile Modise is answered on that one. Mpho, can I put this one through to you now? It is not surprising that the retention of female engineers continues to be a global problem. What resilience and strategies, if any, can we adopt to overcome this?
Yeah, I think for women, at first, I want to answer the issue around sort of what you're implying, sort of natural attrition of women in this field. I think it becomes an issue of balance because we are called, we may not have to work maybe that much harder in terms of the output, but the things that we are trying to balance as women are quite a lot. Some of us want to start to have children, we get married. So there are different roles that come into play. And at times the expectation of work hard and be there all the time, it becomes a bit much for women who are trying to balance so many things at a time. For example, I'm just going to give this example. I've got is young kids, and typically around this time I decline meetings because it's dinner time, and you may find that there is more pressure to be able to get a project across. And how do I balance that? And at some point, I start to have to make trade-offs and say, my life at this stage, what needs to happen? So I just think that the COVID-19 impact has been able to balance that people actually have full lives. It's not just the technical output. The kids are there in the background. There is this, you've got sick parents. There is a full life that us as people are living. And I think the element that COVID-19 has disrupted the thought around office time, around expectations of time. And so I think that we have had sort of a blessing or a silver lining to this thing, is that, and I think it will boost a lot of women, because they can say now, no, I'm sorry, I have got this to do now. I'm sorry, I can do this at this time. I just think that for me, navigating my career, at times I found it difficult to be able to convey those kind of things. Whereas now it's sort of, it's a norm. Everybody has to balance all the balls, not just career balls. And so I think that sort of openness in society will do a lot to bolster that women should not naturally remove themselves from the career, and that they can know that they are well covered and well supported to be able to fulfill the different roles that they have to play in life. And yeah, that's my view. I think that's a silver lining of the COVID impact.
Thank you, Mpho. And continuing with that, I read a PwC report on work, on Women in Work Index. They have what they call Women in Work Index. And this question, basically, I prepared this one for you. I prepared this one for you, Petunia, right? And I'm going to go over to Prudence after this one. According to the PwC report on Women in Work Index 2021, the progress for women in work could be back at 2017 levels by the end of 2021 as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. How can we prevent this in our own sector? Do you think that employers are flexible with regards to the challenges that women are facing during this pandemic?
Thanks, Fatima. I don't think, I think in the beginning of the pandemic, obviously a lot of employers were not sure how to handle this, right? But I think, like Mpho mentioned earlier, that with all of us now working from home and having all these dynamics that we are dealing with, children, family, and so forth and so forth, I think it will get to a point. I think it's starting to get there, to get to the point where employers have to understand that it's not just, you're not just you as Mpho in a silo, right? There's a lot of other people that are actually making you the person that you are. So what I think the employers will need to do is, one, I think by now most of them are catching up that this is the status quo, and we need to just get on with it. And also, what we need to do is to make sure that going forward, because it's not like this pandemic is going to disappear tomorrow, right? It's not going to disappear today. It's going to be with us for a long time. So we all need to help each other to work around it, and to acknowledge that each person actually have their own lives outside of work. I know with especially now with working from home, sometimes it's difficult to knock off, right? You're working late into the night because the assumption is that it's not like you have to drive, go get stuck in traffic or anything, so, but we have to draw the lines, to say, well, like Mpho mentioned earlier, that now this time is actually dinner time, it's not easy. But yeah, I know it's not easy, but unfortunately, that's what we need to do. And also, we need to just focus on developing ourselves also outside of work. To go and maybe learn more about ourselves. What can you do as a person outside of your work? What actually defines you that is you know, we tend to say, well, this is me, I'm an electrical engineer, right? But other than that, who are you? You know, so it's those values that we actually have to take into the future, because we don't know how long the pandemic is going to stay with us. So we have to use those to you know, to just to make this like to make it the norm, you know, and to make sure that we stay in the sector, you know, for everybody to actually just understand that this is how it's just the way things are.
Thank you, Virginia. Can I just go to Prudence now, because there's a question here on the floor, which I think is in line with what I've also planned to ask, right? So let me start with my question. When it comes to the energy sector, Prudence, with the recent launch of the RMIPP procurement program, are we starting to see, in your opinion, to see more women occupying the energy sector as business owners? And are there specific challenges that you think that women are still facing in trying to enter that space?
Thank you. Yes, I think there are a number of women-owned entrepreneurs that are coming into this space, but the numbers are still low. I think overall in the built environment, we've got a low number of women taking up the business sectors, although it's growing. If you look overall in the infrastructure projects, it's nearly around 11% uptake of women at the different levels of, and one of the barriers being the funding barrier. They also, I think it's the question that has been brought again, it's maybe from ourselves, the nature of the industry itself, that is also still a challenge in terms of attractiveness to women in the sector joining into that space. I think in overall, the opportunities are starting to increase. And I think also from a government point of view, from a regulatory point of view, the regulations are opening up for women to participate. The question is, how do we break through the barriers that are there, and the sort of the myths that are there that you have said in terms of making the industry more attractive to women to enter into the space. And the more we engage into this kind of discussion and women taking leadership in different organizations, the uptake into women taking leadership in the project management space also, that will influence the intake of women in the business sector and opening up. I think just being an owner of a business, it's scary on its own, let alone being a female in that sector. So those are the, if you go and look into the registration of women construction, in the construction industry, it's very low. Especially at the greater, I think it's level 8, the intake there, it's low. The government roles are there, and the regulatory, like I've said, are opening up for that. But the question is, how do we make it attractive for us to participate in those? How do we take leadership positions? And I think if we look overall in terms of the technical organizations, the women leadership as well in that, it's still very low. The management position, the senior positions of women, if we don't improve those in organization, it will be very difficult for us to then create those women uptaking in the business as a whole. The project management skills are very key in order of developing that, because it takes beyond you just being an engineer now. It takes you being able to further educate yourself and position yourself from a project management space, from a business management and entrepreneur skills. So this is taking you beyond just your engineering skills. So it comes back to the issue of, are we learning to upskill ourselves, develop ourselves beyond the entry level which is just our base education as in the technical field as engineers, but then taking yourself that up notch to be able to take up on the opportunities. And I must say, the opportunities are opening up. And also the COVID-19 has also brought up, as much as it has brought negative things to the economy, but I think it has brought a lot of positiveness from a working perspective, that now a lot of industries have opened up and challenged to balance the work life, and also just the flexibility of women of working hours and how we work in this space. So that on itself, I think going forward in the future, it will bring a lot of flexibility and the easing up in terms of women participating in the industry, because we're not just talking about a 8 to 5 job, but about how you can manage your hours in any time of the day and working in those environments. And I think that will help us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prudence. And we have Ukelebukhile Modise, who's asking, what advice do you have for unemployed engineering graduates? Mpho, do you want to advise Ukelebukhile and all of us here?
Yeah, look, I think the situation is just so dire in South Africa. I mean, you alluded to, am I allowed to mention the other nation who's being, I don't want to name them by name, who is having access to work, not only in engineering sector. I've also picked up in social media around undergraduate doctors who are now having a civil action against government for specifically that. I think, firstly, it's very difficult. It's a very difficult environment at this stage for people getting into an industry. I think, unfortunately, the bad side of COVID is that it has disrupted sort of decision making around possibly and risk taking and the appetite for risk of taking up new entrants. I would say, for one, be sure as an unemployed graduate to start to create your presence on at least career platforms, like for example LinkedIn. You are more than just your degree. What is it that you can contribute to the social how can I say, to the conversations? What articles can you write? If you are able to access possibly in those environments, who can you shadow? You may find that people may not be able to pay you to be an employee, but they can allow you to shadow them, which will allow you to have experience, which then will allow you to access opportunities. I think it is important to start volunteering, for example, in this non-profit organizations, such as those run by our colleagues, my colleagues on the panel, where you will start to network with people who have got different opportunities. I think that perhaps maybe the fallacy of engineering is that you put your head down and look down literally into the lab, into the work, whereas the world of work is about looking up, raising your gaze and being able to connect with other people, create opportunities. So I think it's absolutely vital to start building your network and start building your personal brand and your presence by being reliable in small activities such as those, for example, in non-profit organizations, or writing an article, participating in a webinar, writing to different people across the world. It's so funny now with COVID-19, everybody's so interconnected. It is so very simple to shoot an email to somebody in other universities across the world and start networking, and you will be surprised at the opportunities that are being opened up. But my main advice to engineers, and more especially women engineers, is to lift your eyes from the keyboard, from the lab. You have to deliver, but you have to have a balance, that you look up and you meet the society and the society the society at the eye level, so they can see you, so they can know about you. I think that's very important. That's it.
Sure, that is such great advice, and I think even for those who are even employed, just that whole what is the notion of being able to network wherever you find yourself, being able to put yourself out there. Thank you so much, Paul. Ladies and gentlemen, we have run over time. So many questions have been coming through, and unfortunately, I can't read all of them, but I hope that in the next chapter, the next chapter webinar that we'll have, we'll be able to engage some more. I would just like to thank Petunia, Paul, Prudence, and all the attendees that have taken the time to be able to be here with us. We really appreciate you for attending, and we just want to say have a great evening, and please next time when we invite you, please do tune in. And ladies, there are comments here that came through, that job well done, so thank you very much, and goodbye everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks everyone.
Bye.